evening and welcome to Fanboy Rants. Actually, this is going to be a conversation about Star Wars The Last Jedi. We've already done my review, but what we thought we would do is have a look at the opinions of some OG original trilogy fans. So myself, Steve and Chris, all in our 40s, and we all saw the original Star Wars films at the cinema and obviously been fans ever since. So we'll get our take on all the three of our takes on obviously The Last Jedi, maybe touching on the Star Wars franchise as a whole. First thing I want to talk about is what we did like about Star Wars The Last Jedi, and I'll start with Chris over here. So Chris, what did you like about Star Wars The Last Jedi?
Not a lot, but Snoke. I did quite like the character of Snoke, and I like the scenes that he was in, but it didn't really go anywhere, you know. But I did like him, and I suppose I did like the return of Yoda. I didn't like the way he looked necessarily, but I like the way they brought him back into the story. But apart from that.
And Steve, you got anything else to add to that?
The aspects I liked, I guess, some of the action sequences were good. That's about it.
And for me, you can obviously see my thoughts on the review. I will say I did really like Mark Hamill in this movie. I thought he did a great performance, and I think he gets kind of a little bit kind of not the respect he deserves in regards to his acting ability. Out in his whole career, and I thought he actually did a pretty decent job here. But obviously, as you can probably tell, there's a lot we didn't like. So we're going to go through, and we'll start with Steve this time. Give us your kind of like thoughts. Don't hold back your thoughts on Star Wars: The Last Jedi. As an original fan, someone who has liked this movie, liked this franchise for the last 40 years, who's seen the original films at the cinema. Go for it.
Okay, I mean, I was looking forward to the film. I did have, when I saw the trailer, I just wasn't really sure, but I, was very keen to see it. I wasn't as excited as I was when I saw prior to Force Awakens. I was just very disappointed, almost immediately as it started. The opening sequence was fine. It's just when you get to the humour between Poe Dameron and Hux, it's just too forced.
Cringeworthy.
Yeah, it was just too over the top and just very unrealistic, and I kind of got to that point, and that was quite early on in the film, and I didn't like that. And however, I thought, hopefully it's going to get a lot better than this, but I was sorely disappointed. I thought the storyline was absolutely crap. It was weak. The characterisation was weak. As Leo has said, Mark Hamill, I thought, did a great job portraying Luke as in the vision of Rian Johnson. However, for me, I don't think it was the right direction, but that's not Mark Hamill's fault. But I think Mark Hamill did a really good job. Other bits I didn't like was the fact that they developed, in the other Force Awakens, they kind of developed these characters like Snoke. I've never been a big fan of Snoke anyway. He's just a rehash of Palpatine, and I think that is one of the problems with the new Star Wars films. What they're trying to do is they're relying on past glories, so they're trying to pick up certain points from good aspects from the original films and try to mimic those in a way, and then on the other hand they just completely trash the characters that have been developed before. So it's kind of like with Luke Skywalker, suddenly he's become some sort of hermit, he's become a manic depressive, doesn't use the Force anymore. What the hell is all this about? It's crazy, if you ask me. And to me, the whole thing with this, I think Disney are ruining Star Wars. Kathleen Kennedy is ruining Star Wars. There's too much emphasis on trying to be politically correct. Let's get all lots of female cast in it. All the men in it were made to look stupid. Finn's character was pointless. He didn't really do much in that film. He went off to that Canto Bike casino planet.
Freed animals.
Didn't really do anything. And then they kind of free these Disney-like horses. It was just, to me, it wasn't a Star Wars film. It's like somebody is playing at trying to make a Star Wars film.
I think to come off something, if this will have spoilers, by the way. The scene where Finn is going to kind of ram the cannon towards the end. If he had made that sacrifice, I think that would have been a better scene with Finn, and would kind of made Finn feel like he contributed to the actual story.
Film, yeah.
Obviously, you wouldn't have him in the next film, maybe, but I think if he was essentially peripheral, he really didn't have anything. His storyline was very much kind of in the periphery, really, to the main plot here. Chris, have you got anything that you kind of want to jump in on in regards to what you didn't like, other than what sort of Steve went
I
through?
think Steve's covered most of it, but I didn't like go back to the comedy elements. I don't like and it's happening, a lot lately. Is the forced comedy where, in the original trilogies, if there was any kind of comedy, it was not contrived, and it was just almost accidental comedy. But they have to put like in jokes in, and none of them work, and it was quite sort of toe curling, horrible, scenes.
I want to go say something that is part of one of my bugbears. Though I didn't really say this in the review because it was kind of a spoilery type thing, but something I could bring up here. And this might only seem a small thing to a lot of people, but to me, if you think about the original trilogy films and the prequels for this, the focus of this new series is nearly entirely on humans. And if you think about the original trilogy movies, a lot of the non-human characters were actually characters. Chewbacca, R2-D2, C-3PO, and even like Jabba the Hutt, and kind of like smaller characters as well. They were characters. In this film in particular, but also I would say this as well with the kind of maybe to a lesser degree, but for The Force Awakens as well, you have no kind of like non-human characters. And the ones that we do have, so I take Chewbacca as the kind of the main thing. Chewbacca now really is the only kind of original character that we have left, and he is not treated like a character. He is treated as set dressing, as a kind of something that looks cool that will remind you of the original films in the corner. He has no character.
Same with the droids.
And the same with R2-D2 and C-3PO. And these are characters who don't age because they're costumes. So there's no reason why the actors are going to age out. So there's no reason why these characters can't be written in to be genuine functioning characters. I mean, the most egregious example of this is actually, I would say, in The Force Awakens, really, where obviously Han is killed, and then Rey, who has known Han Solo for a day or so, she's the one that consoles Leia, and Chewbacca just walks past. But that's an example of The Force Awakens. But Chewbacca has no kind of characterization in this movie. R2-D2 and C-3PO may have not even been there. I mean, it's clear they want to have new droids so they can sell new toys. And even BB-8, I would say, really doesn't have a hell of a lot in this movie, to be quite honest. But the kind of the non-human characters, and you've got to think of, there's so many alien species that we see in this universe. Are humans the only ones that seem to have any type of position? And another example is Admiral Akbar, who was a classic character that has garnered such a kind of like a cult fan base. He's killed off screen. He should have been the Holdo character that kind of put the ship through light speed through the kind of the big one at the end. That should have been Admiral Akbar in his kind of his moment of sacrifice. But no, we want to have it to a human character, and obviously giving it to a strong female character, which I have no problem with. Strong female characters, but it seems to be.
It's just the way it's done.
That is when with Kathleen Kennedy, that's been her decision before telling a good story. That seems to be her priority above of telling a story which is
Wants inclusion.
yeah, which is it should her priority should be what is the best Star Wars story we can tell, and then within that, what characters can kind of serve the purpose. Whereas it seems to be Kathleen Kennedy's mandate has been right. We want to turn the franchise into this new inclusive thing that's going to include every type of demographic that we can sell merchandise to and get to come to the cinema. It's now kind of firing back in her face, and we've seen a lot of pushback and the kind of a lot of the kind of the original fans. And you've got to think, as a Caucasian male, there is no Caucasian male heroes left in the series at the present. I mean, it's fine. I like the Finn character, but all of the Caucasian males are on the bad guy side. They're all Caucasian males. All Caucasian males on the bad guy side. Everyone else is obviously of different ethnicity, female, and that's it. And that kind of bothers me a little bit. It just seems to be very much this kind of this SJW, and kind of ignoring. I mean, Kathleen Kennedy's going to go on record in saying she owes male fans nothing. And, I feel like I'm coming across some kind of like, I don't want women to be included. I do. But, I feel that is the top mandate above of telling a Star Wars story. I feel when the Force Awakens starts, if you go back to the Force Awakens, it pretty much wipes away the legacy of the last films. And I don't care about the expanded universe. To me, I don't care if it's canon. I'm not interested. At the end of the Jedi, they defeated the Empire. Han and Leia are together. Luke he's overcome, and he's turned Darth Vader back to the good side, and he has essentially martyred the Force. Force Awakens undoes all that. The Empire is exactly the same as it was in the end of Jedi, if anything
Just with
worse.
a new name.
Yeah. I mean, it is the Empire. Why even bother changing the name?
Yeah.
Han and Leia have split up. Luke's just kind of like off doing his own thing. Everything we've kind of, and then it's like, no. We don't care about those old characters. We just want them as a platform to bring in new characters, so we can kind of do what Disney want to do with new characters.
My problem is that's fine. You can bring in new characters, but the problem is I feel that new characters are weak and they're not strong enough. And I feel the next film that comes along, I don't think all those characters, Finn, Rey, Poe, they're not strong enough to carry the film through. And I think a lot of people will not go and see that film. I will not go and see the next Star Wars film because to me it doesn't feel like Star Wars anymore. There'll be none of the original characters. You might have Luke pop up as a ghost, Force ghost, but to me it's just gone. They're just trying to take everything. They're forgetting about what happened before. They just want to wipe the slate clean, start afresh. And I don't have a problem with bringing new characters in, but it's just
they kill everything off, don't they?
Yeah,
I don't think they're necessarily bad characters. I quite like Finn, if I'm honest, but they haven't done anything with him. And Finn, I really like the idea of a stormtrooper, just a kind of like a random stormtrooper having a crisis of conscience and kind of defecting. I thought that was great, and I actually quite like John Boyega in that role. But in the Last Jedi, he doesn't do anything.
He wanders around in a suit.
Well, it's almost to me. It felt like it was almost they'd done the film and they thought, we haven't done anything with him. Let's write something in.
Send him off to release some horses.
Yeah. Do a little pointless side plot.
The other thing I have a problem with is like with Rey. So within this film, but also with The Force Awakens, is that the Jedi train for years. Okay, the Jedi become Padawans. They learn with the Master, and they do that for years, trying to master the Force. Yet you have Rey comes in. She's a nobody.
Kicks Kylo.
And is all powerful. And I don't have a problem with the fact she's not from a Skywalker lineage or Kenobi or anything like that. I don't have a problem with that. I just have a problem with the fact you were kind of led to believe from The Force Awakens that she would be related either probably to a Skywalker. Because Luke's lightsaber was calling out to her, and it was all just very, you're kind of led down a path and you think it's going to go, and then it's just completely just blown away, thrown out of the water basically. It's just, it just doesn't make sense. And the same with Snoke. You know, you kind of built up, they bring in a new character, but they didn't develop the character, they kill him off in this, it's ridiculous.
I've seen some people defend the Snoke decision in regards to, you know, it's kind of like, some people like the way that he was just kind of like, oh, it doesn't matter. Well, I think it does matter. I mean, he is the head of the new empire, and he's clearly got to have come in from some influence.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I think it's a cheat to not go through fans. Well, how have we got to that point? And then they're clearly going to do it in a book. I don't care about the books. You know what I mean? It's, most people do not read the expanded universe books.
To a certain point, they kind of wasted potentially what could have been quite a good character if you delved more into his backstory and stuff.
Absolutely,
and I think waste it. You know,
at the end of the day, like Leo just said, he was, you know, this guy's in charge of like basically the Empire with a different name. He's like Palpatine, you know, he's all powerful, and you can see he's, you know, a powerful Force user. Yet he gets killed by some pissant, angry teenager, and it's just like, I don't know, really?
And he didn't see it coming.
And he, you know, he didn't even notice it. He's supposed to be like a real powerful Force user, you know. It just doesn't make sense. And I understand what they're trying to do. That in the next film, Kylo Ren's going to rise up, which is fine. But I just think they've done it all wrong.
What I will say is, what I would have liked to have happened if this had happened in the Last Jedi, I thought this would have been a good way to go. The scene where Rey and Kylo fight the Praetorian Guards, and then ultimately, and obviously after he's killed Snoke, if those two had joined forces and kind of come to like a middle ground where it's kind of like almost like, you know, you have maybe two people, one who's kind of on the light and one kind of who's in the dark, but they can kind of work together to have this kind of like middle ground. And then they maybe have to kind of try and deal with both sides. That would have been interesting, I personally think, because it would have been something that we haven't seen before. And to have this kind of like, almost like a coalition of not quite, you know, dark, the dark side of the Force, but not quite to the worst side, and Rey maybe could be, you know, she's on the light side, but maybe she's kind of edging towards some sort of darkness. So you have this kind of like, you know, not on the same level. Kylo's obviously still darker than, you know, than Rey, but they're not quite to the extremes of each side, if that makes sense. And you have this kind of thing where they can work together, and ultimately they're at odds with each of the sides. That I think would have been really interesting, but that's not what happened. But it would look like it may have done, so that was a bit of a thing. You know, it's. I mean, so just very again another small thing you mentioned to me off camera. You don't really see any of the same species of aliens that you do in like the previous films, and that's clearly, oh, we don't want to have like the old, so you can use the old toys. We have to have new aliens. So you have to buy new toys and stuff like that, and it's just a horrible way to go. That I feel the direction is just a pamphlet. The films are a pamphlet to sell merchandise, and I know that, you know, arguably Star Wars has been that, but it has had integrity before this. And just I was going to kind of clarify something I said earlier on as well. So Disney has bought the property. They want to have control of the main characters, so they have found ways to sideline the original crew, just so they can then put the focus on their characters that they have created, and then ultimately lead the franchise to those characters. But I just think they were expecting fans to just eat it up without question, and that's what I think the mistake was. Now, Kathleen Kennedy, who's in charge of Lucasfilm, she is the person that is the guiding hand of the Star Wars franchise, and apparently there was no planned through storyline. So when J.J. Abrams obviously did the Force Awakens, and whoever wrote that, I've forgotten who wrote that, but
Lawrence Kasdan,
Yeah, so that's the story for that film, and then Rian Johnson, did he write?
Yeah,
He wrote Last Jedi, yeah. So he had free rein on that with a kind of a guiding hand from obviously, Kathleen Kennedy. But there's no, if you look at the Marvel formula where you've got Kevin Feige, who is the head honcho of Marvel, he has a very kind of detailed plan about where all of those films are headed. So they have their own stories, but there is a through narrative and a path. So he is an executive producer that has got leadership, he knows where he's going. Kathleen Kennedy, I think, is too busy kind of like trying to kind of get the girl power thing, trying to kind of, think about merchandising and kind of like inclusion, and she's kind of not been the leader that this kind of franchise needs, and not had this, the finger on the pulse on the narrative, rather than this kind of trying to make Star Wars this kind of like brand that is just so universal. And I think that has been her priority and not the story. And now you are seeing the pushback, and I think it might get worse, if I'm honest. And the problem is now is you cannot go back and change it. You cannot bring Han Solo or Luke Skywalker back to life, and unfortunately Carrie Fisher's no longer with us. So the chances that we've had taken this franchise into a direction that we would have liked to have gone is now gone forever. It's gone forever. We can't do anything about it.
Like you said there as well, and also about characters. The only character they didn't kill was the one that's actually dead in real life.
Yeah.
Where they could have killed her, but then they did that stupid Mary Poppins thing, and she's never used the Force before. She's had Force.
We don't know that.
We don't know.
But on screen.
Not on screen. Yeah.
And all of a sudden she.
One thing I think I would have liked George Lucas to be involved, and I think that's what it's lacking. It's lacking George Lucas's magic. I know a lot of people don't like the prequels. I mean, I'm not. I like Episode 3. The other ones, they're okay films, but I'm not a big fan. But to me, they feel like Star Wars films. This didn't feel like a Star Wars film. It felt like somebody was trying to play doing a Star Wars film, making a Star Wars film.
It felt more like Battlestar Galactica, the Star Galactica series.
Or an episode from, not Clone Wars, Rebels or something like that. It's more, it didn't feel like and I think it was just weak. The ending was just so weak.
And they were in the same peril they were at the beginning of the film. At the end, nothing had changed.
Yeah.
In the whole kind of thing, had it?
For me, Star Wars ended with Return of Jedi, and I'm not going to collect anything. I mean, I've got a couple of figures from The Force Awakens, but I will not collect anything related to this film because I cannot stand the film, and I will not see the next Star Wars film.
I will say this in defence of Last Jedi to a degree. I do think as a film, it's not a badly made film. And I think if you were to watch this film as a completely new, you're not really, you haven't watched the Star Wars films, you're not precious about it.
It's a piece of entertainment.
I think you can watch this film and kind of not be quite as affected negatively as maybe someone who has, been a fan of the franchise for so long, like us guys. In that respect, I feel that you may like this film and kind of understand why it doesn't feel like it's a betrayal of the franchise. And then maybe that was, I think, I got a feeling that Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy wanted to do that, but they just didn't think that there would be so much pushback from the core fan base. Because they were including so many callbacks, you had all the characters, you had the returning characters. I thought there was going to be kind of like, cool beans. It's all right, we've got Luke and all that in there,
great.
Fine.
It's great that Luke's in it, but he's not Luke. It's like he's not really Luke as we remember Luke. It's a completely different person, and it's a completely different character. It's out of character. It's it just doesn't make sense. There's no continuity between that and the other film, and it's like it's amateur night basically. Why? J.J. Abrams did Force Awakens, and then Ryan Johnson gets free reign to do what the hell he wants on the next film. There's no continuity. Did they not like actually? Kathleen Kennedy say actually we need to take it in this direction because it's been set up from this film. But no, just scrap that. Let's just do our own thing. It just doesn't make any sense, and it just to me it's just not a very well made. The story's poor and weak, and they just get rid of these characters. The other problem I have is the characters they're trying to develop, like Snoke, or they were in Force Awakens. He's just a rehash of the Emperor. And then these scenes in. I think what they try and do is they take good elements from the original films and they just put it in to try and, in a way, to make maybe the original fans like it a bit more. Like
but slightly changes. It's not snow, it's salt.
Yeah.
Yeah, that bit. They're all
just to say we're not
on that crate planet. It's just like they're all led out the rebels in a trench, just like they're on Hoth, and then he licks his finger. Oh, it's salt. So
it's cyanide.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. It's just not very. I don't know. Crap. I didn't like it, and I would.
And also that character of Rose,
Lost
she didn't really do anything either. She was a pointless Rose. Yeah, she was like a pointless character, really.
Well, I mean, she was just in that kind of dead-end storyline, to be honest with you.
That was just pointless. I didn't like that planet either, Canterbury.
I think the idea with her, they wanted to have a bit more of like an everyman type or every woman type, to kind of understand. But unfortunately, she got saddled with a shit storyline, and then they kind of everyone sort of slapped their heads when we kind of got into the kind of the Peter save the animals type, very heavy-handed message. So I mean, I think these characters have potential, but I feel the way the story has gone has squandered their potential. And I'm not a big fan of Daisy Ridley, I've got to say. I don't think she's a very good actress.
No.
I know everyone kind of raves about her, but I personally don't see it. I think her line delivery is quite bad, and she hasn't done much acting, prior to this, to be quite honest with you. I know everyone loves her, that's my thing. I personally don't think she's a particularly great actress. But I think the character has potential, and I think we had the whole Mary Sue thing from The Force Awakens, which they haven't really kind of resolved. I don't think in this film, to be honest. But that's not necessarily Daisy Ridley's fault. That's again just down to some shit writing, quite frankly, and that's Kasdan, unfortunately, in that respect. And Poe, he's okay. I don't mind him so much, but he just seems to be a little bit. Oh, he's the best fighter pilot in the galaxy. Why is everyone the best? Why is everyone the best thing that they ever do?
Yeah.
Oh, Rey's the best Jedi. Poe is the best. Poe is the best fighter. Why can't he be a pretty decent fighter? Fighter.
In this film, they kind of made him look a bit of a buffoon as well. I thought.
Well, lack of communication is the problem with that one. That's storyline. It was meant to be this thing where, he's disobeying orders and that, but all Hodo and Leia could have done was just say that's the plan. That would have been the story then. So, it's a forced issue, that one. But I will say in his defence, I will say that everyone hates that Canto bite scene, but one thing I will say in its defence is that it kind of is interesting to see a plan just completely flop in a film, where a good guy's plan completely just falls on its arse. Because normally you don't see that, do you? You don't. If the good guys make a plan, they execute it. They might have some difficulties on the way, but eventually it will work. So I will say it's quite fun. In a way it's fun. I didn't like the story, but it is quite fun to see a plan completely fall on its arse, basically, and be completely irrelevant to the plot because they really didn't need to do that. So that, in a way, I would say is an original idea, but unfortunately we spent so much screen time with it. It kind of, you're thinking, that was kind of, I just wasted half an hour watching that scene.
I think also they probably wasted that Benicio del Toro's character as well. He didn't really have much to do, did he?
I reckon he'll be back, to be honest with you. I think that's more of a set-up for the next film.
Possibly.
If I'm honest. But yeah, it's just a case of here's a well, an actor in a supporting role, just so we can say, starring.
I think they're trying to deliver a message. So it's the ultimate message is, you know, you don't have to be a Skywalker. You know, you don't have to be a big
You can be
name or
broom
from a
kids.
powerful family to mean something or to make a difference. You know, that's fine, but I just think the way it's done and the way it doesn't belong in the Star Wars in that film, it just doesn't work. You know, it's like so all the, you know, anybody can just start, you know, becoming a Jedi, even though, you know, the Jedis are gone, so they're not even going to become Jedi. So it just makes a mockery of what's gone before. So makes a mockery of like everything we've seen in the prequels and in the original trilogy, where the Jedis are, you know, having to train for long periods and are really focused. Yet some kids sweeping a broom, you know, sweeping horse shit in a bloody stable can, you know, yeah, he's gonna, you know, could be a powerful Jedi, a powerful Force user. I just think it's just so weak, and it's just so it tries to be politically correct, and it's trying to be, let's take on child slavery, let's free.
I don't expect to be a film to be completely incorrect. Don't get me wrong.
No,
but it's too much.
Stuff like that doesn't really belong in Star Wars. I don't think. You know, it never. You know,
no, I agree.
They never bothered with anything like that before. So.
And I think that taints the story. So they're focused on trying to be politically correct, and let's have our stance on animal cruelty and child slavery. And
that's the thing, isn't it? I think you can boil it down to the focus of Kathleen Kennedy has been to try and promote political messages at the behest of trying to direct the franchise in a strong narrative manner.
Yeah,
that's what I think. What it boils down to is the problem. Kathleen Kennedy should have a plan about exactly where the story was going. If Rian Johnson wants to then write a story kind of based on the plot elements that they have the writing team have kind of set out, then fine. But it should not be, okay, how can we kind of have lots of kind of strong female characters and then write a Star Wars story around that? It should be, where do we want to go? And then kind of build it that way, rather than what I feel like has happened is that Kathleen Kennedy is going, right, we want to start bringing in fans from kind of different kind of like backgrounds that maybe have traditionally kind of like been felt excluded and stuff like that, and then build up characters and stories around that, rather than kind of building the story first and then kind of building up characters that will then fit in with that story. And have, for Christ's sake, I mean, it just bugs me when you have all these these characters have some different types of people.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Especially female characters. I mean, people always go, it's inclusive. All of the female characters are written pretty much the same. Have some variety in them. Have some female characters with some flaws that are problematic, like Han Solo, or naive.
Yeah,
or something like that. Why can't we have female characters that are diverse as in regards to the different types of person? Why they always have got to be strong, kick-ass leader types?
Do everything.
Yeah. It just I know it's trying to promote this message of kind of positivity for women, but
which is fine, but it's a Star Wars film, and there's certain things you expect from a Star Wars film, and I don't think I'm all for women moving forward and really
yeah.
Okay, so I don't think it belongs. I think it's a Star Wars film. It needs to be told in a way that fits with the original films, and it just doesn't do that. It just doesn't. There's no continuity.
Yeah, I mean, you've got. I think they have some. You've got different personality types with some of the male characters. I don't know. It's just
again, reverting back to the original trilogy.
It's just trying to put in,
like Luke Skywalker, for example, in the original film, he was pretty. He didn't suddenly become great until the last film, did he?
No.
the first two pictures, he's weak, crap at what he's doing.
I think sometimes people are afraid to write weaker female characters nowadays.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, because they don't want to seem to have a flawed female character. Every female character has to be like a powerful, a positive character, isn't it?
Yeah.
It does, but
you know, and it's not indicative of
it's
life.
not realistic, is
You know,
it?
no, they can't. Not that there can't be any. But there has to be
I have
a.
a problem with that.
Every lead character
It just
is the
doesn't.
same.
Yeah, it just doesn't really work. It doesn't add up, and
You tell me a female character from this new film that isn't, you know, a kind of take charge, doesn't take any crap type woman who, you know, can show the men how it's done and all of that, and will, you know, has leadership qualities. They're all the same. They all have that same kind of like base sort of personality, and it frustrates me. And you know, I know, you know, people might say, oh, it's great that it has all these kind of like strong characters, but I feel they're just coming off a template, and it bothers me. And I think you should have just as much rich characterization with all characters, not just kind of like be afraid to show faults in kind of characters because you're trying to appeal to that audience. It bugs the hell out of me, to be honest. But I don't think it's the kind of the main issue. I think the main issue is that like I said, is that this is like a rudderless ship, and it's trying too hard to think of merchandising opportunities, and it's trying too hard of thinking how can we appeal to every single demographic on the planet first, rather than thinking what's the best story we can tell.
Story,
yeah, and that's what it comes down to, I think.
Yeah. No, I do agree, and I think they're trying to convey, political messages, which, you know, are positive messages. But do they really belong in a Star Wars film? I don't.
I think you can have them, but I think it can't be the primary focus.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to think of The Last Jedi. The story is basically one long chase. You know, that's and at the end of the movie, really at no different. There's no real difference compared to the beginning of the
Plus, I
film.
think, you know, this film's probably the worst ending of any Star Wars film as well.
Yeah, it almost feels like it's the end of the actual franchise to me.
Yeah.
Because you just think, oh, where's it going to go here? I feel like it's almost like
They ended on a real kind of.
they've almost kind of just felt like it's ended.
Yeah.
It doesn't leave you. And they've really kind of left J.J. Abrams up a bit of a shaft, really, because the next film is. I don't think it's going to have their anticipation.
It doesn't make you want more, does it?
No.
No, it doesn't.
You're not really waiting for another one because
there's no.
Where's it going?
The original characters are pretty much gone, and it's, you know, you're kind of like, you know what's going to happen. Kylo Ren's going to be like
The Supreme Leader,
running the First Order, and it's just.
Again, he's a character in a way that they could have explored better.
All right, let me ask a different question to you guys. Where would you, if you were in charge of Lucasfilm, where would you like to see the story go from this point on? What would you do with Star Wars? Now, what you can't do is, I'll wipe the other films away because they're here. We can't not have them now. So you can't just kind of like scrub these ones out. But where would you take the franchise where you feel it could go and save it? Any ideas? I'll be a big no then. I always say this. I think they have to now finish this kind of like the next episode 9 has to finish that story. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a given. I think you can't get away from that. I would then say it kind of to really invigorate the story. It has to take place maybe a long time after these movies, and the setup's got to be very different to not the Empire and not the Rebels. What I personally would have liked to have seen in these films, I'm going to rewrite the films, but it would have been interesting to have the Rebels and become like the Republic or whatever, and they be the kind of the ruling power. Because you think, right, the Empire is a substitute for the Nazis, isn't it? right? So it's pretty much got this kind of like World War II thing, and that was representative of that era. In the modern era, that we don't have that kind of in our real world. That is not how the political and the kind of the world landscape is anymore. So you could have, the rebels have won at the end of Jedi, and they are the kind of the ruling republic and what have you. But what you do have is pockets of maybe, new forces that have come up and now threatening the republic, and they are then essentially the rebels, if that makes sense. And you've got to think of how our society is today. The US is the kind of essentially the ruling force on the planet, and then we have obviously political and countries that are insurgents, and that's how I would have done it to kind of to mirror that.
Yeah. The other thing as well is in this film, so the resistance. Then there's not that many of them really.
There's about 15 of them left.
So you would have thought that once the Empire had been overthrown, that the Republic would try and get back on its feet, and other star systems would be involved, forming the resistance and backing the resistance. But it just seems like there's hardly anybody there. There's less in the resistance than there was when there were the Rebel Alliance. When it first
30 years
started.
ago, yeah.
It just doesn't make sense.
And that's not on The Last Jedi at that point.
No.
That isn't Rian Johnson's fault. I think the setup was a mistake from the get-go. But I think they wanted to have the callbacks to the original film. They want to have an empire.
But I think that's the problem. Is what they're doing. They're taking elements from the original trilogy, and they're they're redoing it, rehashing it to try and appeal to those original fans. But it doesn't work. You're just rehashing stuff, and then the element, because you're changing the elements, people don't like it.
What you could have done was have almost Star Wars in reverse. So The Force Awakens, you could have had maybe the end of the Republic, and then you have this new version of the Empire, so the First Order. At the end of The Force Awakens, then seize power. So The Force Awakens could have ended. We start off with The Force Awakens with the Republic being in power and everything is hunky-dory. And then the story of Force Awakens is how the Empire then, or the New Order, kind of then seizes control of the galaxy. And then we're left with our heroes thinking, shit, we've lost, we've had 30 years of the Republic and peace and everything like that.
You could have made
and now we've had the New Order come in.
And you could have made it better second.
So you're almost doing it in reverse, and then it leaves it for this film with the Empire being in charge, and then the rebels, on the back foot again. But at least then you feel like you've not had, it hasn't disrespected the legacy that the other films have had.
Absolutely.
Do you see what I mean? So you've had that last 30 years of kind of the Republic being in charge, and all the efforts that Han, Luke, and everyone had in those movies paid off, and we had this 30-year.
That finished in a way, it was a good ending, and a happy ending, but it was, it was a definitive ending, and it made sense.
That was the end of the Anakin Skywalker chapter, wasn't it?
When you said what would I do next, I would make this film. I'd start the next film with Rey waking up, and that whole thing's been a bad dream, and then she's on the planet with Luke, and he trains her, and goes from there. Yeah, that's what I would do, because I don't know. It doesn't feel like Star Wars anymore.
I can't see any. It's going to be hard to have a direction. I can't see where it's going.
But I will be interested to see what the ratings are going to be like for the next film.
I got a feeling. I think there'll be a bit of backtracking. How
are they going to backtrack?
Well, I think because you know how Kylo Ren says, Rey, your parents were just drunk, they're nobody.
Turn out to
I think, Kylo Ren was lying, because in truth your parents are really someone else.
And
That could be what they've done, or it could be that it turned out that it kind of maybe shed some light on Snoke. I honestly don't know. We've only got one film left of this trilogy to kind of do it all in.
But the other thing that worries me as well, that Rian Johnson wants to do another trilogy, and I think it's just leave it alone. It's just gonna completely ruin the whole Star Wars franchise.
I think another trilogy could work, but you keep it completely separate from anything that happens in this.
Yeah,
If you started a whole new series of films that have nothing to do with the characters from these films, then you're starting from afresh.
Like you said, maybe that's what you said earlier. That maybe that's what they should have done.
Yeah.
With these, and not had anything to do with leave Return of the Jedi as it was.
Yeah, I think you feel like you're not pissing on someone's chest, then,
Well,
are you?
where are they going to go? I think fundamentally, what they should probably do is bring the Jedi back at some point.
Personally, I've kind of done to death the Jedi, but
that's what the whole.
that's what Star Wars is.
It's all about that, though, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's all about.
It's part of it.
Well, most of it is about the Force, isn't it?
Mm.
So the New Hope, it's all about.
Well, you say that New Hope had very little to do with the actual Force.
No, but it was about Obi-Wan meeting Luke and then trying to lead him on this path so he can.
I mean, Empire and Jedi, yeah, but Star Wars, original Star Wars, the Force was only a tiny small element in that.
Yeah, but
Luke doesn't even fight anyone with a lightsaber in that movie,
and
that
was disappointing that there wasn't like a proper lightsaber fight in this movie, and I just felt I didn't actually mind the bit with Luke, on that planet.
Why is it
Great.
bloody hologram?
It was astral projection.
Yeah, but again, that was.
But I was disappointed that he died at the end of it. They should have. What I would have liked is have, rather than his X-wing being at the bottom of the sea, because he's manic depressive and he's pushed it over the edge or whatever. I would have had it where he comes in his old X-wing, lands, maybe far off, a bit far away, but you can see all the Yatats and the walkers lined up, and he gets a bit closer and he uses the Force to knock a few of them over or something like that, and then have a massive lightsaber fight with Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren comes off with maybe losing an arm or something, something like that. Just.
Or maybe even kill Kylo Ren in the middle movie instead of leaving it to the last movie, which is a rehash again of the others, isn't it? They always leave the main villain. It would be good if maybe the main villain, instead of Snoke dying, maybe him dying. And just to make it slightly less samey as it's been. Before.
I quite liked. I've always said this, and I quite liked. What's his name? Miles, the guy who plays Kylo Ren. I quite like him. I thought his character. I quite like the way he played him. I've forgotten his name. Miles, isn't it? Adam Driver. Why did I get Miles? Adam Driver. I thought he was one of the best characters.
He's a good actor. I just don't like his character's whiny.
Yeah, but I think in some ways.
Ridden.
Yeah, but in some ways, I think that's good in some ways. I think in The Force Awakens it was good because he was very temperamental, but it showed you his.
It's all about the anger, isn't it?
His weakness was he wasn't ready to be. He wasn't ready for it, and he just throws his toys at the pram. I thought that was quite a good element.
Yeah.
It's different than Darth Vader's character.
Because Darth Vader is very controlled, isn't he?
Yeah.
Whilst.
But if you go back to Anakin when he was a whiny little fucker, wasn't he? So, it's the same sort of thing.
Thanks for getting this video demonetised, Chris. That's fine. Yeah, I mean, I quite liked. I think I wasn't a big fan of Kylo Ren initially, but I've grown to kind of appreciate him a little more, to be quite honest, because I do think it's kind of like it makes sense that the dark side is all about embracing the kind of your anger and stuff. So, you think about it, Vader was very controlled with anger and didn't let it kind of get the better of him. Whilst Kylo Ren just leans into it basically. So it kind of makes more sense. You think the Jedi are all very much like the monks, basically. They don't have emotions, so it makes sense that the dark side is the other end and is very emotionally driven.
Another thing I think might have been an interesting thing with this film is maybe again have Kylo gone back to the light and she went to the dark, or something like that, or him coming back to the light before the last movie.
I don't know if he's redeemable. To be honest with you, I think I don't know if you could have him come all the way over to the light.
But I mean, essentially, what he's doing, he's just getting rid of the past, isn't he? He's getting rid of his father. He's getting rid of his mother.
Johnson's doing it.
Yeah, exactly. He's just it's kind of a way of getting rid of the old characters, get rid of the old. Let's get rid of the Jedi. The other thing is, it's like what got me as well was the Yoda scene. I liked the Yoda scene, it was okay. Yoda looked a bit funny to me, a bit puffy. Looked like he'd been on steroids, a bit
Funny, haha.
puffy in the face. You know. But what I didn't like was the fact, Yoda basically says, you know, can I swear?
Yes, you can.
Fuck the Jedi, you know, screw it. Let's just, you know, she don't need to learn anything. She knows it all anyway. So let's forget the Jedi. I was a Jedi for 900 years. But hey, let's not worry about that. Let's just forget all about that. It just doesn't work. It's just ridiculous. It just takes the piss out of the whole original story. It's just.
If you ask me, all these Star Wars movies that come out now, they tarnish the original trilogy, which they shouldn't.
Well,
you know.
to me, Star Wars ended with Return of the Jedi. I mean, I liked some aspects of Force Awakens. I didn't hate The Force Awakens, but I do hate this new Star Wars film. To me, it's not a Star Wars film. It doesn't feel like a Star Wars film.
I mean, Force Awakens did feel
too
like a Star Wars
contrived,
film, didn't it? But
they're trying to deliver a political message, you know, about freeing fluffy horses and stop child slavery, you know, which is great.
Because we love child slavery. Go child slavery.
No.
We are big proponents of it.
Oh yeah,
They definitely should have it.
You know, I just don't think, you know, I love animals and,
I like animals. Let's some gravy and potatoes. Love animals.
you know, I think it just doesn't feel right in that film. It just doesn't work. It's kind of like, I don't know, they're very Disney-like, fluffy little cutesy, horsey things with big ears.
Why can't there be some
nice,
ugly looking
cute
thing?
eyes. And it just, you know, I didn't mind the porgs, having said that. They were okay, because they were kind of in the background. They were just like animals. They were just like birds, you know, and they were okay.
Pigeons. They're like pigeons, basically. Like
Puffins.
fucking hell, they're nesting everywhere. Shit's all over the place.
Puffins.
It reminded me of pigeons.
I didn't mind them. But I did like the fact that,
the good thing about the porgs,
you know, they go to
Yeah.
Canto Bight. They end up trying to rescue all these kids and rescue these animals. And it's like, it's just not part of the story, surely. It's, you know,
maybe what they should have done is not change
why don't they make
directors.
another Disney film about, you know, freeing child slaves and freeing horse-like creatures? You know, it just kind of took away. I didn't see that. There was no point to that part of the story. It's not relevant to a Star Wars, to the story of, you know, all the key characters in the film. It just didn't make any sense whatsoever.
It was to pad a weak movie out, wasn't it? Really?
Yeah.
I didn't need pages. It's a freaking long movie.
Yeah, it was too long, and it was. I didn't like it. I'll give it 1 out of 10.
Okay, well, should we have some closing thoughts then, Chris? Any closing thoughts?
Well, on The Last Jedi or Star Wars as a whole?
Yeah, maybe like.
Well, I think it's pretty much dead now. And
Will you see episode 9 at the cinema?
I don't know. Possibly.
Oh, I'll see it. I'm not gonna lie. I will see it at the cinema.
I won't see it on general principle because I'm not going to line
I bet you will.
Disney's pockets. Because I think Kathleen Kennedy has ruined the franchise, ruined the stories.
But also, you know, Disney is Star Wars overkill now, isn't it?
Yeah, and
it's
gonna,
not just this trilogy.
They're going to end up like, it's going to be like Star Trek, you know, Next Generation. Not that they're okay, but you know, it's going to be milked to death. They're going to like sell as many toys as they can, and it will
That
just
was
be.
an odd scene. Speaking of milk.
Actually, I didn't mind that scene. The guy's got to eat and sustain himself. You know, he's stuck on an island with his.
He's a bit of dribbling the beard.
These bloody like puffin pork things. You know, he's got to eat. So and
Man's got to milk some green milk out some tins.
Yes. I didn't actually mind that bit because I didn't really.
Did it turn you on?
No, but no, I won't be seeing it, and I'm not interested in anything that Disney do related to Star Wars anymore.
You liked? Hang on. Whoa. You liked Rogue One?
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I like Rogue One.
That's Disney.
Yeah, I like that, and they got that right. And I think, you know, a lot of people didn't like certain aspects of that. I thought it complements the original trilogy quite well.
Because it's
not as good as.
It's in the
Although
frame,
it has a kick-ass female lead that won't take any crap, and she wants to lead the guy.
I actually thought she was alright.
It's the same character.
Yeah, it is very samey, but I thought that film was quite a good film. But I just feel that each film they do is just going to weaken the whole franchise. People are going to lose interest, I think, long term. I think, especially people of our generation, who are in our 40s, who are into the films when we were, you know, I got my first Star Wars figure when I was like 4 or something, 4 or 5, and I've kind of been into it ever since. Up until now, I still, you know, I collect stuff related to the original films and the prequels, but I will not be buying anything related to the new film.
I like the design. So I like the design of the stormtroopers, and I like the new design.
Yeah, I don't mind that.
But,
Essentially, the biggest problem is the storyline. George Lucas could tell a good story. Yeah, he got slated for overuse of CGI and stuff like that.
And Jar Jar.
And Jar Jar. But I think fundamentally,
I think if George had some people around him that would, because the problem with the prequels is he had no boundaries. Like Rick McCallum's like, yes, George, yes, George, yes, George. I think if you had George and you had some people around him that would say, oh, you know, maybe we could do that instead, maybe then. I think George left unchecked can go on a bit of a tangent, and that's what happens when we get the prequels. I think, you know, he's a good ideas man, but I think he needs someone else or a couple of other people there to maybe. That's what I think.
Steer him away from using Jar Jar things.
Well, just something. I think the problem is with the prequels is that George had no filter, and I think he was unaware about what audience wanted to see. He had some good ideas, but you know he needed some people who would actually not be afraid to say no to him. And I think if he were to do that now, he might. To be honest.
Yeah.
But his idea of episode 9 was to fill it with kids. That's what his original idea was. If he did do an episode 9, was to have it with kids, like young kids. That was his idea.
That's why they didn't want to do it, because they saw another Phantom Menace.
Yeah. So, you know, I know we all, before you worship the Church of George, then just bear that in mind.
Well, I think George is the man. And Kathleen Kennedy.
You're a big fan of Red Tails.
No, I'm not. But no, I think George. He created Star Wars, and I think fair enough. He didn't want anything else to do with it. But I just think all they're after is the money.
Which I understand. It's business.
Fair enough. They bought it for so many billion.
But unfortunately, they've also bought 20th Century Fox now, so they're going to end up owning all the original ones. So
I just think Star Wars is going to. What's going to happen is Star Wars is going to be so commonplace. So it's going to be you'll have a film every year for the next 10 years, and towards people are going to get sick to death and they go, oh bloody hell, not have a Star Wars film.
I think it'll end up being like Transformers, is what I personally think.
And all the Freddy Nightmare on Elm Street films and Jason and
Police
just
Academy.
done to death. Star Wars 25. Just leave it when it's good and just they were good films and leave it at that. I'm not a big fan of reboots anyway, because I think most of them are nowhere near as good as the originals, and people, what they do, they just ride on somebody else's glory, write original stuff, and make original new films. It's surely these writers and directors have got some imagination and some creativity that they have to just remake films that were successful.
A lot of people think that they should have maybe gone for like the Thorn trilogy and kind of take some inspiration from the expanded universe books.
Yeah, I think that would have been good. Or do Star Wars have the Old Republic?
Yeah.
Maybe do that with Darth Malgus. That kind of thing.
Yeah, because those
which
books,
is more far removed from the Skywalker.
But those books, is it the Timothy Zahn books that you're on about?
Yeah.
A lot of fans regard them as the 7, 8, and 9. But Disney didn't use any. they didn't use any elements, did they,
No.
from expanded universe?
Well, it's not canon anymore, is it? Disney have got rid of that.
Yeah. You know, it's just. I think it's gone down a path. I think it's going to be hard to recover from. I don't think they will. I think they'll just carry on. Because even despite the fact that it's kind of, and as I said in my review, this is kind of like handing the baton over, because I know there are fans of this film, and I think the majority of those fans, not all, I'm sure there might be some OG fans that like and love The Last Jedi, but I feel most fans of The Last Jedi are fans of new to the series. And I think what will probably happen is Star Wars will always be a big franchise, but I don't think it's going to be doing the kind of like the as it goes through in time, it will transform into something which is unrecognisable,
Mediocre.
to the kind of the original fans, and it will just kind of be an okay, you know, it'll be a series that does all right, well, good business, but it's not the kind of it won't be have the cultural impact that maybe the original films had. And, you know, fans of the new films will think, oh yeah, it's pretty good, but I liked, you know, Spider-Man 8 or whatever. But, do you know what I mean? It'll just be an okay franchise for the new fans. Whilst I think in the future, the original fans will kind of, I've still got my, you know, my original VHS version of, you know, Empire Strikes Back or whatever. So, you know, Star Wars Holiday Special. Did you like Star Wars Holiday Special better than Last Jedi?
I didn't like that, but
What about Caravan of Courage?
The true spin-off.
yeah, I like Caravan of Courage better than that. The other thing, it's like, so I've spoken to a few people who aren't actually Star Wars fans, and they actually thought it was, you know, they liked the film.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Good.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
However, every single Star Wars fan within my kind of age, our age group, you know, for the originals, fans of the original trilogy, they don't like it.
I didn't dislike it as much as you, I will say. There are certain elements where I felt disappointed with it, but I didn't hate it.
When it finished, there was this guy in front of us, and in the cinema, I was sat next to, there was a group of us that went. Some people had seen him before. One of them thought it was okay, and he didn't really let on, because we were, on the way there we were asking him, does this happen? Do you learn more about Snoke? And he's kind of like, didn't really tell us anything. When we got there, at the end of the film, there was this guy in front of us and just stood up and just shouted out, "What a load of bollocks!" And that was, I think, a lot of the older people our age in that felt that, basically. And there was, as people were walking out, I could hear what they were saying. They were like, you know, I was quite stunned in a way. You know, I mean, I'm not going to like go and hang myself because it hasn't affected me that much. But I was very disappointed, and I was almost. People seemed to be visibly upset by it, angry, and you know, I felt angry. Like more the fact it's kind of disrespected all what's gone before, and it's kind of like just taking all that and just let's just get rid of that, chuck it all away. Let's do something completely different, and it just doesn't. It doesn't work. It just, you know, you need to keep it
real.
Keep it real. But you need to keep it. It needs to have the continuity with the original films.
Anyway, we'll leave it at that because my camera is nearly running out of batteries now.
Okay.
So we'll say goodbye. So, any OG fans that watch this video, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. Do you disagree with anything we said? Do you agree? Do you have other thoughts? Was anyone a big fan of it? I know a couple of my viewers are. Leave us a comment and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. And thanks to Steve and Chris for this video. Bye for now.